I'm Fatheree.
This is Dave.
This is Brian.
And this is Tex-Trek.
Engage.
So welcome back aboard the Starship Texas for the 76th installment of the Tex-Trek podcast. Your home for Star Trek fandom from deep in the heart of Texas, where we talk all about Star Trek old and new. And tonight we're discussing what is almost universally considered the greatest next generation era Star Trek movie, Star Trek First Contact.
Despite my overwhelming love of Star Trek Generations, this probably is the best one.
I would tend to agree. I'm not a huge fan of the TNG movies in general, but this definitely comes closer to the mark than any of them. So,
and
would you agree? Favorite?
Yes. This is actually my fifth favorite Star Trek movie, and it is the only non-TOS movie that makes it into my top 5.
Interesting. It's interesting because you didn't grow up with the TOS stuff as much. You dove back in, but I guess it was all I had when I grew up.
I kind of did. I mean, like, we were both like the same age when we saw the Wrath of Khan for the first time. I just was seeing it a decade after you were.
Yeah. I guess I imprinted extra hard on TOS because it was literally all that there was until I was 13. So I had to ease into Next Generation.
I imprinted pretty hard on TOS for similar reasons, but it wasn't all I had. There was Doctor Who. So.
and when I came into Star Trek, I tell this story a lot, so I'm sorry if you've heard this before, but I came into Star Trek around like 1994 when Generations was about to come out, and that's when I was watching all the TOS era movies. That's when I was getting into DS9 and the TNG and TOS reruns, and then shortly after that, Voyager started. So, by the time that 1996 rolled around and this movie came out, I feel like at that point I was already like a little Trek-spert. I was already like well-versed in the lore. I was very familiar with all 4 shows. I had seen all the movies. Although not in the right order, the motion picture I had only seen shortly before this movie came out, actually. Because I had a hard time tracking down a VHS copy of that as a kid. I went into this movie, this was the first one I saw in the theater, and I was so freaking excited to see this, to see Star Trek on the big screen. I remember like watching the trailers for this, the TV spots for this, anticipating it so much. I remember like my uncle actually like took me to go see it. And the where I grew up in a little rural town, Rockdale, Texas, the nearest movie theater was like 45 minutes away in Texas town called Pflugerville. And I remember like I was thinking about like what I was gonna say when I got in he drove a Jeep. Like when I got in like the Jeep with him, like the night before, I was like, I'm gonna get in there, I'm gonna say like set a course for Pflugerville, maximum warp. Like I was like that like nerding out about this.
That's hardcore. Yeah. Did it live up to your expectations?
It actually did. And like the joy that I felt from watching this movie and it being so good and
that's so much better than my first Star Trek movie being Final Frontier or Star Trek 5.
Like where this lived up to my high expectations.
He's alive.
This lived up to my high expectations. But I do understand what you felt, Brian, because a few years after this, when I was a little bit older, when I was a teenager, I took another trip to the movie theater in Pflugerville on, I believe it was May 19th, 1999, to see a beloved film franchise have a brand new installment on the big screen for like the first time in my lifetime that I would actually get to go see in the theater, and it was not something that lived up to my high expectations.
Yes.
Yes, the other star.
The other Star franchise.
Yeah.
But enough about that bullshit franchise. That's only good half the time. We're talking about Star Trek First Contact, directed by Commander Riker himself, Jonathan Frakes.
Yep.
Yes. Proving that Shatner was just a fluke, and most Star Trek actors are apparently very good directors.
Yeah. Nimoy and Frakes both pulled it off, although Frakes also directed another movie after this that we'll have to talk about next week.
I think it's going to be an interesting conversation. I'm kind of looking forward to watching it again.
Yeah, this movie was also written by Brannon Braga and Ron Moore. I know I kind of beat them up a little bit last week when we were talking about Generations, which they wrote, but I think this is actually one of the finer scripts in the Star Trek film series. It's a very tight story. There's actually I don't think there's any deleted scenes of this movie on any disc or anything because the script was so tight they didn't need to really cut anything.
It is very well structured. I will get.
Yeah.
It is the exact problem that was missing with Generation, a lack of structure. This thing has in spades. It might be the most tightly structured Star Trek movie.
Yeah,
So.
and it has some darker elements. This has some of the most action and violence that we've seen in Star Trek. It also has some of the scariest moments we've seen in Star Trek. But it still maintains that positive, optimistic Star Trek ethos that is so important to a Star Trek story.
Yeah, I do remember people complaining, it's too dark. It's not good Star Trek because it's too dark. Now I wow, look at Discovery and where we are and things today and Star Trek Into Darkness and stuff. And I'm like, wow, you guys didn't know when you had it in light.
And I think 1996 for me was probably the high point of my Star Trek fandom, simply because the amount of Star Trek I had access to. I was watching Voyager, I was watching DS9, there were plenty of episodes of TNG. I was actually collecting TOS on VHS at the time. So I was getting these cool prestigious VHS collections of episodes. And we were getting a TNG movie every 2 years. And I just thought that was normal. I just thought I assume for the rest of my life I'll get 52 episodes of Star Trek a year and get a Star Trek movie every 2 years. And this is just how it works.
We may finally be approaching the point of time when you might get close to that. Although, because they run shorter seasons, you're not going to get close to that.
Well, if they have 3 shows on the air at the same time next year...
It's going to be more.
Yeah,
it's only...
there's 5, 6 shows in development now.
Something.
So eventually we'll get to a point where there's a new episode of Star Trek every week.
I mean, they could all start tanking.
Yeah, that is a best case scenario that they're all going to make it to production and go and last.
When I saw this,
I'm hoping.
When I saw this in '96, another one I caught at the theater. I had not liked Generations at the time, and I overtly disliked it. And this one kind of brought me back around and made me start to reconsider the possibility of the next gen movies. Almost certainly because, tightly written, good action. The Borger, I would always agree they were great villains, and I liked Zefram Cochrane's story. I thought he had a cool arc. And a great actor playing him. So it was one that I didn't love it when I saw it, but I was like, that was pretty good.
I think I enjoyed it. I laughed. I thought it was fun. I enjoyed it more than Generations. I did have at this kind of vague awareness coming out and talking about it after the first viewing that not as good as Best of Both Worlds, and I wasn't quite as excited about it as I was with what was going on in Deep Space Nine at that point in my life. I was like, oh, that was cool. That was great. Glad I saw that. So what do you think they're going to do on next week for Deep Space Nine? It was definitely a good, solid, enjoyable film. Over time, I think some of the jokes have perhaps feel a little like, do we need all these jokes? This movie, a slightly darker, slightly more serious tone, I feel might have made this a little better. But
I think the levity balances it out, and for me, the humor works for the most part. This movie also does have kind of like a very like 90s vibe where like everything has to go like extreme and there's like bigger explosions, there's some little action movie catchphrases that might make you cringe.
Action movie catchphrases.
But overall, it's a healthy mix, and I still enjoy this movie a lot. Not quite as much as some of the TOS ones that I might have like a little bit more respect for. I think they're a little bit more timeless, and
this has grown in my esteem a fair amount to the point where it might have it may outstrip, I don't know, maybe Star Trek 3, for instance. For me, I'd have to think about it a little bit and get my numbers in order. But yeah, the Next Generation movies broadly have grown in stature, and the TOS movies have diminished. A few of them have diminished a little bit for me.
Oh, so going into the theater, I had no idea that there was going to be time travel in this movie. All I knew is that they were going to be fighting the Borg. Mm-hmm. What were y'all's like expectations going in?
I did not know about the time travel either. I was like, holy cow, what the heck are they doing? Where are they going? What's happening? Oh, Zefram Cochrane. I remember, he's the guy who did Warp Drive. Fortunately, at that point, the metamorphosis was like, I'm not sure if I'd ever seen that original series episode, so I had no preconceived notions about who Zefram Cochrane should be. That was like one of the episodes that I didn't have access to with my friend's collection. So
I had just watched that for the first time like 2 or 3 months before I saw this.
Oh, so were you kind of like, this is bullshit? That's nothing like him.
No, I thought it was cool.
Oh, okay, cool, good.
But I did not know there was going to be time travel, I think, but I actually don't have strong memories of like of thoughts on it. I think it surprised me pleasantly, but what struck me more was just, oh, hey, here's a Next Generation movie I liked when I didn't expect it.
The 90s, I think, might have been a weird time for Dave when he did a lot of LDS. And he doesn't have like the best memory of seeing some of these movies the first time. The thing with having like the Borg in the movie as like the main villain, that was like a mandate that Braga and Moore had like going in, and that was like the first piece of information I remember like coming out was like, okay, like I don't know how you felt about Generations, but in the next movie the Borg are going to be the bad guy. They were talking that up for a while.
That is a very logical, obvious choice for a big screen movie. It's something they could
for
barely
a Next Generation movie.
Yeah, you could barely make the Borg work. It's very hard to make the Borg work on the on a TV budget, and it's something that would really benefit from that extra money that you could get in a movie. So
I think having Jonathan Frakes as the director, you got such great performances out of the actors because they all love Jonathan. All these actors love each other, and they're all like best friends, and they hang out when they're not making Star Trek together.
Yeah.
And he is really like he's an actor's director. And this movie has like some incredible performances in it, from Patrick Stewart specifically. Like he's so well showcased. He has such range in this. And part of the reason why Jonathan Frakes got to direct is because Patrick Stewart went up to bat for him when they were trying to find a director, and Patrick was telling Rick Berman, he's like, he's kind of throwing his weight around as like the big star. We should really give this to Jonathan. But I'll just go ahead and go straight into the story of this movie in case any of y'all haven't seen it recently. I'm gonna very quickly recap it and give you what we call the transwarp summary. The moment that Captain Picard has dreaded for nearly 6 years has arrived. The Borg, Star Trek's most lethal enemy, have begun an invasion of the Federation, and this time there may be no stopping them. A single Borg cube cuts through a fleet of Starfleet ships and continues towards Earth. Right on Earth's doorstep, Picard and the Enterprise join the fight. That's Enterprise with no bloody A, B, C, or D, but with an E, making its badass debut. Picard turns the tide of the battle with his Borg knowledge. After all, he was at one time assimilated by the Borg and was part of their collective temporarily before he was rescued by his crew. The fleet destroys the Borg cube, But a smaller ship, a Borg sphere, ejects from the cube as it explodes and proceeds to Earth. It creates a temporal wake and travels back in time. Back to April 4th, 2063. The day before humans make first contact with alien life. The Borg planned to alter history and assimilate the planet, but the Enterprise was able to follow them through the temporal wake. They destroyed the sphere, but not before it shot some torpedoes down to the Earth's surface, damaging the Phoenix, humankind's first warp ship, built by warp drive inventor Zephram Cochrane. The Enterprise sends a team down to Earth to assess the damage. Riker, Geordi, and Troy remain on Earth to help Cochrane repair his ship and make his warp flight on time. According to history, when Cochrane test drives his new warp engine, aliens on a nearby spaceship will detect his warp signature and decide to make contact with humans. This is supposed to lay the groundwork for the eventual formation of the Federation, and it is imperative that history is not altered at this crucial moment. Back on the ship, it turns out some Borg managed to get aboard and have taken over engineering. Data locks out the ship's main computer, but he is captured by the Borg. The Borg Queen, the leader of the Borg, begins converting Data into a partially organic cyborg and tries to seduce him in order to get access to the ship's computer. But Picard goes full-on action captain and is able to free Data and kill the Borg Queen, who turns out was the one responsible for his assimilation years ago. With the Borg defeated, and with the aid of Riker and Geordi, Cochrane is able to complete Earth's first warp flight. After he returns to Earth, first contact occurs right on schedule. Cochrane shakes hands with Earth's first official visitor from another world, a Vulcan, and history can now unfold as it should. With the mission complete, the Enterprise and crew return home to the 24th century. The end.
It's a pretty tight story.
Yeah. There's actually, when I was writing that summary, I was like, oh man, there's so much stuff that happens in, the beginning of this movie.
Yeah.
But then I'm like, all the pieces are, set in place, and then it just all, organically just, comes together and ties up neatly. And
yeah.
All three plot lines.
It's one of the shorter.
Yeah.
It's one of the shorter Trek movies. The running time on the Blu-ray is an hour and 50 minutes, but it also has that long opening credit sequence, which I'm not complaining about that. I actually remember watching that for the first time in the theater, and again I was an impressionable little kid, but the Jerry Goldsmith score.
This is your favorite, right?
I don't really listen to the Star Trek movie soundtracks outside of the movies individually that often. Mm-hmm. But I think if I had to pick a favorite Star Trek film score, I would pick First Contact. And whenever I hear the music at the beginning of this, I think it's so beautiful.
You're talking about the one that from the credits where it's that kind of sort of sweeping, soaring Americana sort of theme that recurs throughout the whole movie.
I never thought about it as Americana until you pointed it out. But yeah, it definitely has elements of that.
Yeah.
And It to me it kind of legitimizes the movie. It's sit down, pay attention. You're gonna watch a piece of art,
right?
Yeah,
a little not relying on the sort of Trek tropier music. Whether it's the Goldsmith's Next Generation theme or motion picture theme, or other standards that we've heard before. It kind of feels like this is going to be a movie with some epic sweep to it that. Pay attention to.
And especially coming off of Dennis McCarthy's score of Star Trek Generations, which I don't think is bad. I think it's fine. There's no point in that movie where I think the score sucks. I think it's fine the entire time. But that's probably my least favorite, and it probably has the fewest moments that really stand out.
You know what's interesting about that opening the credits music in First Contact is that it is not big action music. It doesn't have that kind of action music vibe that they sometimes do, even though it's about to lead into one of the bigger action sequences in a Star Trek movie, and a Star Trek movie that, in fact, overall has a lot of action. But it doesn't sound like that from the opening score.
Yes.
Don't you think?
It does support the more intellectual side of the film would be the more
it's about
emotional,
the discovery.
more interest.
I would disagree just ever so slightly, and I would say it emphasizes the emotional side and the heart.
Well, the mind over the body.
Right, whether it's Picard coming to terms with his need for vengeance, or Zephyr Cochrane kind of figuring out who he is, or just the kind of a tribute to exploration. It feels like it could kind of mix all of those together a little bit at once.
Yeah, and it's also like whenever I hear it, it takes me back to the climax of this movie, the final scene, which to me is one of the most important parts of Star Trek history, and is one of the most satisfying ends of a Star Trek movie.
But shall we go to the beginning first?
Sure. So, the story opens with Picard having a dream within a dream.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't think you can get away with that now. At this point, though,
it has aged a little, yes, that part, that gimmick.
But in 96, I don't remember it being a particular problem.
Yeah. And it has some startling, almost horror movie imagery of him being assimilated into the Borg Collective. Yes.
But it also sets up some really impressive special effects. But the ILM boys did, or there might have been some girls, where the ILM people really did some stellar work on this movie, and it was such a beautiful marriage of practical effects with models and also CGI, and they blend together so seamlessly. And that big shot in Picard's dream where he's in that big Borg collective.
Right, it begins with him in sort of the stasis cocoons or whatever that they're in, and does a long pullback that looks like it goes up like for a mile out to the exterior of the Borg ship.
I remember people in the theater just being like, "Oh, whoa!" When they saw that.
The design work on the interior of the ship is great.
Yeah, and
it is good that it's a dream,
it.
Because I'm pretty sure that wouldn't fit inside a Borg cube. So that couldn't have been what it actually looked like in Picard's past.
There's this one special effect shot that looks so incredible today. It looked super incredible in 96. I'd never seen anything like this before. But when that needle is poking out his eye, and it's very unsettling to watch. And you think
it's going that this Borg needle, this assimilation thing, is going to stop just short of his eye and probably startle you, but not actually go in. And you see it just start to poke into the iris.
Yeah, his eye actually starts to cave in a little bit before he wakes up.
Yeah, it's pretty unnerving.
But then he goes to the sink, and then Borg technology starts growing out of his face, and it's a jump scare, and then you wake up again.
It's a double dream.
And I actually jumped when I saw that. I remember jumping in my seat. But yeah, he gets a call from Admiral Hayes saying that the Borg are on their way, and this is when I really knew the movie was gonna kick ass, was when Picard goes to answer the phone, and he says, "Picard, authorization 47 Alpha Tango." And when I heard that 47, I was like, oh, we're in for something special with this one.
They gave you the old 47 boner.
Yeah. It was, with 47, of course, being the magical Star Trek number.
They tell Picard that they don't want him in the fight, and I feel like Starfleet is kind of justified in that ruling.
Yes.
But it does seem weird, the guy who has the most knowledge and experience of the Borg, and I know this isn't really part of the movie, but if you do care about any the technical manuals or the novels or any the expanded universe stuff, they established the Enterprise E was kind of beefed up to fight Borg.
Mm. But, yeah, he's also the guy who wrecked them at Wolf 359, and would, at the very least, might be a morale killer.
Yeah.
Although, as we'll see, as things play out, people seem to kind of rally around him pretty quick when they need to.
But he is emotionally compromised. We do see that Starfleet called that one correctly.
Yes.
And that just like Kirk was emotionally compromised at the beginning of the motion picture, Picard is emotionally compromised here.
Right. Or also in Star Trek 6.
Yes. And whereas Picard is devastated by the loss of his family in Generations, I don't think we can say he really lets it get in the way of his job.
But
it never really screws him up in Generations.
If Picard had followed Starfleet orders, then the entire Federation would be erased from history.
Well, that's because he gets to be a larger-than-life superhero, essentially, and he gets to break the rules. Yeah. I guess my only point in bringing it up was that Starfleet makes a lot of bad decisions. This one I kind of understood at least why they would err on the side of caution.
So you complain about the admirals and the captains being idiots. This admiral was correct. Picard was emotionally compromised. So
Sure, he was correct, but in his correct choice, he doomed the galaxy.
What he did with that information is wrong, but he did in fact have the correct insight, and so.
Well, let's talk about like the Enterprise E herself. The ship is assigned to go patrol the neutral zone in case like the Romulans try to take advantage of the situation. And we get like this beautiful first shot of the Enterprise E, and I'll never forget seeing this on the big screen for the first time. But the way that they constructed this shot, it shows off the Enterprise E so well in the widescreen format, whereas like the Enterprise D it's a little bit more square, and it kind of fits better on TV on like a 4:3 aspect ratio, back when TVs were square instead of rectangular.
Yeah.
And the Enterprise E, it's longer, it's sleeker, and when you kind of see like that profile shot of it on a widescreen, it really looks like a movie starship.
It does. They also do a great job of doing a big arcing sweep, so that you can see that unlike the Enterprise D, this ship has lots of good angles.
Yes, yeah, and that's one of my problems with like the Enterprise D is I think it doesn't look good from several angles, whereas the E is a lot easier to photograph and make it look badass. Designed by the incredible John Eves, who's actually like designed like some of these ships behind me. If you're watching the video of our podcast, he designs most of the Starfleet ships, maybe all the Starfleet ships on Star Trek Discovery, and a lot of the ships that
he likes long ships
we see in this movie. But yeah, he's one of the best, and I tend to like probably prefer his design mentality over a lot of the other incredible designers that have worked in Star Trek. I think he might be my favorite. And he's also checked us out on our Facebook page and gave us a shout out. So, John, if you're watching this, we still love you.
That said, I'm going to say something bad about his ship. No, I'm just kidding. Actually, I think it's a fantastic design. It looks like, just taken objectively on its own merits, one of the absolute best Enterprise designs there is. I have a weird thing where I feel like the Enterprise D suits Next Generation and Picard and that crew, that this to me almost feels more like a TOS crew era ship. It harkens more to their sensibilities than what had been 7 years of Next Generation.
So I actually think it looks more advanced.
Oh, I mean, for sure,
it looks like a Galaxy class and an Excelsior class had a baby, is what it looks like to me. It's got all the sweepy curves of the Galaxy, but it's got the basic silhouette and shape of an Excelsior.
I feel like it's a design that I could have seen, like in, had they done more TOS movies or something, like it could have come to that. But like, it's kind of hard to argue against because, yeah, it looks great.
Yeah,
I love that even though it's like longer than the Enterprise D. So if you're looking at like all the ships on like a scale comparison of each one, it looks like each ship grows bigger than the other one. But the E is actually smaller than the Enterprise D.
Volume-wise.
It's not nearly as wide.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't have all the families on here.
Right.
Because this is like the in-universe explanation is that, after Wolf 359, Starfleet decides they really need to like beef up their starships a little bit. So things get like slightly more militarized. And I think it's like a healthy dose, which pays off later in DS9 when we actually see like this generation of Starfleet go to war. But this is kind of like the beginning of kind of like that slightly more militarized Starfleet that we get in the 24th century era. But
we should also talk about their uniforms then.
Yeah, we get the black and gray uniforms. Again, I think they work because this is like a little bit of a darker movie, and also like DS9 will go into some darker territory, so they work well there.
Black is always slimming. It tends to look good on people, and
the actors were getting a little older, but they all look good in their uniforms in this movie.
Yep. Yeah. Even though, as we've talked about any number of times, you and I at least both came to prefer the kind of brighter look for the uniforms, with the kind of bigger primary colors popping.
I like colorful Star Trek.
It's in a weird way, it like works like the ship thing for me. They look good. I mean, I just cannot deny how good they look. Yeah. So,
but when I was a kid, I loved these uniforms, and I think for most of my life, I thought that this was my favorite Starfleet uniform. And I think there were several reasons why I preferred DS9 to Voyager when they were both on the air. But like one of the less important ones was I thought, man, like those uniforms on DS9 look so much better than like the older, out-of-date uniforms they have on Voyager. And we get that cool conference room shot, which, Brian, I know you're really well versed in like the sets that they use.
Yeah.
That is, am I mistaken, or is that the same conference room set from the show?
Certainly the windows look absolutely identical. So one of the walls, I'm pretty sure, I think the inner wall might have been ripped out and replaced, because they now have steps going up to the doors that lead out of there. So there was certainly a lot of work done on that inner wall. But the outer windows and the conference room table look identical. So I'm pretty sure that, or very, very close to identical. So I'm pretty sure that is one of the few sets that might have survived from the old era.
It's kind of cool to see like the TNG crew, back together having a conference room scene where they spent so much time in TNG.
Yeah. That's a very TNG iconic sequence.
Yeah, I remember being happy by that, just like seeing them back sitting at that table again.
And they had the ships back on the wall again, like
yes.
in season 1 and 2.
Like an early Next Generation.
Yeah, and they were gold, though I preferred the dull, brassy gold rather than the chromy, plasticky gold.
See, I think these look so good. I wanted to, when I saw this movie, I thought it would be so cool to have like a collection of ships like that on the wall. And I thought maybe someday I can have something like that.
Yeah, only yours are not plasticky, chromy, gold colored. They're like cool looking. So.
And then we get the audio transmission from the battle. It's not going so well.
A losing transmission very quickly indicates this is like in about like 20 seconds of screen time. You're like, oh shit.
Also, because this was co-written by Brandon Braga, they mentioned the USS Bozeman.
Yeah.
So we know that Kelsey Grammer fought in this battle.
Didn't they actually have Kelsey Grammer come in and do a bit of voice work? Isn't he one of the voices?
I actually never knew that, but if that's true, that's incredible.
I'm pretty sure he's in there.
Damn, that is awesome.
Did he definitely survive it?
I don't think there's any way to confirm that.
I didn't know if he's mentioned on Voyager or something.
Yeah, I doubt it, but that he's mentioned. I don't know if he survived or not, but I'm pretty sure they do have his voice show up at some point on one of those channels. So,
I wish we could have seen like the Bozeman in action, because that ship looks like it's ready to fight.
Do we want to talk about the battle?
They did say they wanted a bigger battle, but the money wasn't there.
Huh.
So.
It's a pretty big battle, though. Like, it's weird. All the early stuff in this movie is we're kind of focusing on the visuals, but it's a pretty good spectacle.
Yeah.
We have Data first. He says like to hell with our orders, which that's kind of cool in the movies when you have like the fuck Starfleet. We got to go rogue and do the right thing.
I usually groan a bit at those scenes, to be honest.
They did it on Discovery recently in season 2, and you liked it.
What was the Discovery season 2 one?
When they go to get Spock, and then they like become like renegades.
Yeah, I think they did it a little bit better.
They became renegades for the space of between 2 episodes.
I think because Data was very much doing the to hell with orders or whatever that Spock did.
To hell.
Go to hell, yeah.
It was
way
way too
familiar.
similar. Yes. You're stepping on Spock's line there, Data. But when we cut to the battle, and there's that gorgeous shot of this monstrous Borg cube coming to Earth, and Jerry Goldsmith's music is telling you, be scared, this thing is a motherfucker. And the camera pans up, and you look at like this giant, tall, towering Borg cube, and all these Starfleet torpedoes hitting it, but it still keeps going and going.
Yeah.
And then you really know that the shit has hit the fan when you see the Defiant all battle damaged. Worf is on there. We have Jerry Goldsmith going back to his
Klingon
his
theme.
little Klingon theme,
Yeah.
and he does that again in Insurrection when Worf has a fun moment.
Mm-hmm.
But this, as a big DS9 fan in '96, this concerned me because I was scared. Like, where's Sisko? Where's Dax? Are they on the Defiant? Like, I see Worf's in command. Like, did Sisko die? I mean, like, Worf did sometimes like command the Defiant on its own missions, but.
I knew there was zero chance of the DS9 characters dying in this movie. I was savvy enough about how these things are made. However, I was really worried that the Defiant herself would be destroyed and that no longer be available. I could see that happen.
And so was DS9 showrunner Ira Stephen Bear when he saw the script. And that's why they actually do include the line, the Defiant is adrift but salvageable.
Oh, okay.
Because he wanted them to confirm in the movie that the ship doesn't get destroyed.
Yeah.
But it almost does when they lose life support and Worf calls for ramming speed.
Yes.
But then we get that big hero shot of the Enterprise sweeping in.
That's actually one of my favorite shots in all Trek moviedom. I love how it fills the screen and you get a sense of its bigness in a way that you usually don't, honestly.
And as someone who does, I do prefer DS9 to Next Generation. I love both, but DS9 is by far my preferred Star Trek. It does kind of feel a little insulting, because it's kind of like, here comes Next Generation to save your little DS9 ship, but but
it wasn't a DS9 movie.
Right, yeah, and the TNG crew, deserve, and at this point, Worf is a DS9 character, and they give him plenty of badass stuff to do in this movie. To make up for the 7 years of humiliation he got on the Next Generation.
There's definitely a bit of TNG Worf comes back when Worf gets back on the TNG.
A little bit, but he kicks a lot of ass.
He's like, oh, we're going to go out and spacewalk. Worf's all like, oh, I don't like the spacewalk.
We're going to get to that. But I love Picard taking command of the fleet. Where he basically, he shows up and he's like, all right, y'all, I'm in charge now. Now listen to this.
Yeah, natural 20 on the leadership role, and I'm in charge.
So I used to play a lot of Halo on, back in the old days, Xbox Live. Halo 2 was my preferred game. Mm-hmm. And whenever I'd jump into any team versus team games, and say I was on the blue team, I'd be like, okay, blue team, I'm taking command of the team, and everyone fire on these coordinates.
That's Picard.
Just start quoting this movie.
As Picard once said, let's pwn some noobs.
But there's so many cool ship designs here. We get to see the Akira class for the first time, the Jaeger class, the Steamrunner class, the Norway class. I'm not going to name all of them, but
they spent a ridiculous amount of time designing the Akira class, because earlier drafts of the script needed a ship to do a whole bunch of stuff before that wasn't apparently the Defiant before the Enterprise showed up. And then all of that ended up being unavoidable, so the Akira is super designed and yet gets only a few glimpses on screen.
But it became a fan favorite ship. Like the guys into the ship porn, like me when I was building models.
Yeah.
Back in the day, and I actually I have a 1 to 1400 scale resin model. I still have it to this day. I built it a few years after this, I guess. But that's like one of my favorite ship designs.
And it crawled back in time and became the Enterprise.
Yeah, they just turned it upside down and made it into the NX-01.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is such a cool, spectacular special effects sequence. But what was so surprising in the theater was when this cube gets blown up so quickly, and then we have the time travel thing.
Yep.
Yeah, effectively Picard's strategy works, and then the Borg launches their escape pod, and we don't know what its deal is. And then suddenly
we end up having to assume that the Borg are actually telepathic because of the stuff we see at the beginning in the first act of this movie.
How so?
Picard knows the Borg are on the move, and he's not got any subspace transceiver to receive it. And he clearly does not know what to do about the cube. He's just showing up to kick ass. And then he's like, they get a shot, and he's like, I know, this is the bit. And I think they even play Borg noise, like he can hear them thinking and stuff.
Yeah.
So Borg are part of the collective network is apparently psionic, one has to assume.
There's also
or magic.
There's also a bit in there.
Sense.
There's a bit in there when Picard takes over command of the fleet, where Troy looks at him and she looks kind of nervous.
Yeah.
Is he falling under their sway?
I don't know. I never took it that way, but that might be the case given what Brian just suggested. I always took it as she's worried because she can sense what he's feeling, so she might be worried he's going to go too far off the deep end into revenge.
All ships ram the cube.
But yeah, if she gets a sense of his thoughts and she hears the Borg and knows that he's hearing the Borg, she might be like, "Oh shit, they're gonna get him again."
Yeah.
But we get the ship back in time. We find out that the Borg sphere has come back to prevent first contact, and they keep it a secret at this point, which I thought has such a big payoff to who first contact is with.
Yes.
Yes.
So
we want to wait and talk about that at the end.
Yeah, we'll talk about that at the end.
Okay.
But then we cut to two new characters we've never seen before, Zephram Cochrane and Lily.
Yep.
We had seen Zefram Cochrane before.
Well, okay, we have seen him before, but not this version of him.
So yeah, we got a really tall white guy and a kind of furry.
He's really. You see how much taller he is than Jonathan Frakes in this
Yeah,
movie?
it's crazy. He's got he's like a past middle age guy with a kind of pimp coat on.
Yeah,
he looks the raggedy clothes of the post-war era.
He
Post-World War
would probably
III.
be like 10 years old now, though.
In the present of 2019?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because this movie is 44 years in the future.
Yeah, so he's seeing the war ramping up right
So he's
now.
he's like a 10-year-old kid watching you. Maybe he's watching this, Zefram, if you're like up in Montana watching this.
Yeah, send us a tweet. And
Tell all your friends on Fork Knife or whatever game the kids are playing to check out Tex-Trek.
And then so that's played by the great actor James Cromwell.
Yes,
who does a great
Trek
job.
veteran.
Yeah, and he does a great job of playing a guy who is torn between his destiny and being this common drunk with a lot of selfish motivations. And then there's Lily. I don't know the actress who plays her.
Alfie Woodard.
Alfie Woodard,
Who I think got the job because she was real good friends with Jonathan Frakes.
Oh, okay. She was to me a nobody. I've never seen her before or since, I think.
She's been in some stuff. She's in Captain America: Civil War.
Oh, interesting. But she's a really potent character in it who will end up playing a very important role. And she's kind of she's herself not burned out, but she's kind of angry and like dispirited by the war, and but has this friendship with Zefram.
Yeah, the war being this is shortly after World War III.
Yeah,
there's 600 million dead. Very few governments still standing.
The world looks like they're like in the foresty part of like. It doesn't look as mad as Road Warrior and Mad Max, but it's closer to that than it is to what the future will become.
Yeah, they're in rural Montana, and I kind of like their little village that they have, like their bar that they were hanging out drinking in. I like that because it looks like it's kind of cold outside. They're all wearing jackets, and like the bar's like open. Like I love like
I feel like it's a little Fallout-y, or a little bit beyond Fallout.
I'm not that well versed in Fallout.
I am not
either. I want to hang out at that bar because I like to like drink beer outside when it's cold because I live in Texas and we don't get enough cold weather.
It's a good little set that later gets you get to have some fun times for Zefram Cochrane throughout and Troy.
You guys feel that the alcoholism and sexual harassment is funny, is aged well?
I think the sexual harassment maybe not, but like I don't mind the drunken humor. I don't really see as a problem.
Him being a guy, basically it puts him at complete odds with the heroic picture. Is that he's like a somewhat comedic drunk, but really that's But they show the serious side to it too. He's struggling with confidence in this, and of course with his reputation that precedes him.
Just in this, I kind of wish they dialed Zefram's humor back a few notches, and the tragedy of his life was a little more brought into sharper focus.
You know, I think I kind of agree with that. I've gotten so used to it, and I like his performance so much that it doesn't occur to me to like kind of have that criticism now. But especially when I first saw it, I think I probably would have said, like, yeah, they could have dialed that back a little bit, and I probably would have been more on that.
I think the earlier draft of the script where Picard has to fix Zefram Cochrane is the A plot, and Riker shoots Borg up on the ship is the B plot, would have probably had a more stronger focus on that aspect of things.
I wouldn't have liked that as much, though. And I like the Zefram Cochrane that we got. Just in this first scene where we see the two of them, when like the Borg torpedoes first start falling down on them, there was a little bit of charm in both of them. Like I instantly connect to them, and I get like concerned about them.
It's not easy to pull that off in a movie, like to get like on board some new characters pretty instantly. So yeah,
it's just like they walk out of the bar. He wants one more drink. Oh, that's the constellation Leo. Then like, oh no, it's an econ. Like, and I don't know why, but like, it's just like the right mixture.
Remind me what econ is in this context.
That's the Eastern Coalition. That was the enemy in World War III. Back in the 90s, I used to wonder like what countries we would be at war with in the 2060s. Mm-hmm. All we know is that they're like somewhere east of here, but
it's Boston.
Well, they're kind of more north. I think of them, but like. That would be like the Yankee con, not the econ. But,
Okay.
but they think that like World War III is going on, and I love like Zephram Cochrane just being like to hell with the Phoenix, and we don't even know what the Phoenix is. But it's
is he like just like to hell with it as far as like protecting it?
Yeah, he's like let them shoot it. I don't care. I'm just gonna lay here and pass out from drinking as like these torpedoes explode around me.
Kind of lightweight torpedoes.
Yeah. You would think like the Borg would be able to wipe that shit out pretty instantaneously.
Yeah,
but,
I mean,
but we don't like that sphere was probably like damaged from like that cube explosion or like going through the temporal wake, so they might not have been flying on all thrusters, as Dr. McCoy would say.
Yeah. I'm willing to give it to him.
But then we have the Enterprise. They destroy the Borg sphere. They beam down to figure out what all has gone down. Data gets shot by a machine gun, which doesn't damage him, even though in the TV show he took damage from a bow and arrow one time.
I tend to think it caused some damage, but not significant damage.
I think he's just been upgraded since then. But
I think it looks cool, and it falls under that movie stuff. Is always a little bit bigger. So yeah, he gets to kind of do his Terminator riff and just take the shots and very clearly signal to Zephram Cochrane that he is not of that world.
And this is where we set up the Data arc of the movie with him and Picard seeing the Phoenix in the silo, and Data even though he has the emotion chip now, and you would think like, oh, he's gonna be like pretty much like a full blown human at this point. I think Moore and Braga or whoever created this subplot did a good job coming up with this notion of he's still got to be Pinocchio. He's still got to be like not quite human. He's working on it, and the idea of like tactile sensation, how like his plastic android hand doesn't quite convey that. And
right, Picard touches the missile and is noting that dramatic irony of the something created for war being used to unite the Federate, create first contact, and Data can't experience that, or he doesn't think to.
And I love that Picard said that he had visited the ship at the Smithsonian, which the Smithsonian Institute in Washington, D.C. I love that because I went to the Smithsonian 2-3 years ago, largely just to see the original TOS Matt Jeffries design Enterprise. And I feel like me, like nerding out and seeing that Enterprise ship in the Smithsonian, like that's what Picard felt looking at the Phoenix.
Interesting.
And apparently Econ didn't bomb the Washington, D.C.
Or they just, they rebuilt it after First Contact.
And called it the Smithsonian Mark II.
Yeah. This is where we get the call from Worf on the Enterprise that... Picard actually feels something's going wrong, and he calls up to the Enterprise, and Picard, or Worf says that, like something weird is going on in engineering.
His Borg sense was tingling.
And this first little kind of hint that the Borg have made it onto the Enterprise and the Jeffries tube, where it feels very much like a horror movie, specifically like Alien.
Yeah.
And it doesn't hurt to have the music composer from Alien composing the music here. It does make that feel scary. And I was watching this in the theater thinking like, this is kind of scary.
Mm-hmm. To me, the horror vibe isn't quite as potent as it is in Trek 2, for whatever reason. Maybe it's just Horner is like a little bit better at horror music for me, but yeah, I love the innate kind of creepiness, the cybernetic zombie qualities of the Borg, and that there's always a little bit of horror that kind of comes with them. It's also David Cronenberg body horror style, where like a kind of standard face is like has cybernetics, poking in and out of it. So yeah, the idea of their stealth infiltration is cool. It's like they've built a nest, like as if they're an insect colony, and there's something unnerving about that.
Yeah, and that makes it feel a little bit more like Aliens, the second Alien movie.
Even the increased temperature and stuff that seems, and the humidity that's their stock and trade.
39.1% Celsius is really hot. That's like 102 degrees. Well, that's about like how hot it'll be tomorrow, probably where we live. But
on the starship Texas?
Yeah.
Don't you mean on the holodeck where we're simulating Texas, the inspiration for our starship?
Yeah, we're simulating Austin, Texas.
It's going to be holodeck
2019.
hot. Holodeck hot tomorrow.
But we also get the scene in sickbay where, if you notice in Star Trek Generations, when there's a scene where Geordi wakes up in sickbay and he sees Beverly, and you have Lursa and B'Etor on the bird of prey. They're like, human women are so disgusting. But then, like, in this movie, like, Lily, like, wakes up on the medical bed in sickbay, and she kind of has, like, the same reaction. But she's like, oh my god, who are you? Maybe she's like, gross.
Yeah, that's what they decided to give Beverly in each movie, is somebody going, oh my god!
Somebody recoiling in horror at her.
Now, that was the Voyager set, by the way. The sickbay.
Speaking of the Voyager set, it's also the Voyager Doctor.
Yeah.
When Robert Picardo cameos to distract the Borg. I loved that so much because we didn't get like fan servicey stuff like that all the time back in the. It wasn't like now where like you go see a Star Wars movie or a Marvel movie and they're going to show you like 30 or 40 things, and like every 5 minutes you're going to see something that you already know, call back to something like.
Yeah.
This was a rare treat.
Yeah.
That I was not expecting, and the origin of this, Robert Picardo tells the story that. I might get some of this out of order, but essentially, he had lunch with Brannon Braga, who was writing this movie, and he was talking to him about like, oh, so this is going to be a new Enterprise. It's going to be like more advanced than the old Enterprise. It'll be more advanced than Voyager. Well, why wouldn't it have like a hologram like me if it's more advanced? And Brannon Braga was like, that's interesting. And then a few weeks after that, Robert Picardo had lunch with the other writer, Ron Moore, and was talking to him, and he was like, oh, so this is going to be like a new Enterprise, more advanced and everything. Like, well, if it's more advanced, like, wouldn't it have like an emergency medical hologram, like, you know, like my character? and Ron Moore is like, yeah, it's kind of an interesting idea. And a couple weeks after that, he had lunch with this movie's director, Jonathan Frakes, same thing. And then like a couple of weeks after that, I believe the way he tells the story is that Rick Berman like called him like up to his office one day. And so
this is quite the campaign.
So Rick Berman says to Robert Picardo, he says, you know, we're doing this movie, First Contact. It's going to have a new ship, new Enterprise, more advanced. I have a good idea. It would probably need an emergency medical hologram on it. so he inceptioned the idea up the chain of command to the boss.
Yeah, that's pretty great.
But yeah, nice. It's a cool movie, and a big part of why I love this is because it is connected to all of the 4 shows that were out. We have the Defiant from DS9, we have the Doctor from Voyager, we have a character, Zefram Cochrane, from the original series, and all the Next Generation people. It felt like a perfect movie to have for the 30th anniversary of Star Trek.
Yeah, it's legit.
No, it was a very good use of Picardo. So.
And on the bridge of the Enterprise, Picard and Data, they lock out the main computer. We see Data do like a bunch of security code stuff, kind of like how he did in the episode Brothers of Next Generation when he took over the ship. Back on the planet's surface, we get that bar scene that I think is funny. I think Brian thinks it's a little too problematic. But with drunken Troy, and this scene is kind of special to me because as a young child growing into like a young man, this was actually like the specific moment where I first saw Counselor Troy on screen, and I felt it like stir something deep in me that I felt like a bit of attraction to her.
That you had not felt from the show?
No. Like I think
You needed to see her drunk,
I guess.
And defenses down? Is that what it is?
And talking about how some guy keeps grabbing her.
Well, actually, no, so let me... to give Fatheree a little bit of credit, though. I think there is something about her in a way that the show never had before. It kind of brought her a little more down to earth.
Yes.
She always had a slightly aristocratic thing from the family she came from. And here, I think... And this had to be fun for the actress. I'm sure Marina Sirtis...
Yes, because she always wanted to do funny stuff. And
right.
She's an incredibly funny person. Like, go see her at a con. Go to one of her panels, and you'll laugh your ass off. Unless you piss her off, then she'll get mean. But even that's still kind of fun to watch.
Yeah. But yeah, like except for the fact that she's kind of clearly tolerating grudgingly the sort of the advances from Zefram.
That is creepy. Like that kind of behavior shouldn't be normalized.
But
I would
very
like to
much
think
it was.
we would do better with that now. I would like to think.
It was stupidly of the 90s era.
Yeah. I cannot see Discovery doing that though. If they made this movie, like I think we've progressed.
But yeah, I really like her in this scene, and I like her kind of interaction with Zefram Cochrane. I think did you say that, or were we just guessing that they were actually drunk?
That was what Brian said that James
I don't know.
Cromwell...
I have no idea about Marina Sirtis, but James Cromwell said, yeah, I kept a bottle of Irish whiskey in my trailer, and every time there was a break in shooting, I'd go back and take a shot. And so that was very. He was very. I don't know if he was completely drunk, but he was buzzed in almost all of those scenes that he's supposed to be buzzed.
He plays a good drunk.
I think it's interesting that when DeForest Kelley played drunk McCoy, he would kind of like slip out of his Dr. McCoy voice and into his natural DeForest Kelley voice with a stronger Southern accent. Mm-hmm. And when Marina Sirtis plays drunk Troy, she slips out of her Troy accent, which was based on Marina's Israeli friend, but she slips out of like the weird Betazoid accent and goes into like her natural Hackney accent.
Mm-hmm. What accent?
Hackney.
What's that?
That's northeastern part of London.
Oh, okay, I didn't know it.
The crew also have that moment with Zephyr Cochrane where they show him the Enterprise, and he's like, "Oh, you're all like astronauts on some kind of Star Trek."
It's just this side of being dopey, and that may depend on like how I feel at the moment. But overall, I think it's funny.
I think they'd held back the Trek, I guess, except for Q in All Good Things.
Yeah.
They'd held back it long enough that I felt, all right, I'll let you have this one. You get to say Star Trek in a Star Trek show this time.
I think, in 5 decades of Star Trek, you get to do that one time.
Yeah. I definitely, I was fine with that.
But yeah, they agree that, they don't have a lot of time. I don't know like how late in the night it is, but at 11 o'clock in the morning, they have to have that ship up in the air. So they're on that mission to repair the ship. It is kind of weird how calm they stay, knowing that they just saw some Borg not that long ago, and now they're out of contact with the Enterprise. They're like, yeah, we don't know why we can't get in touch with them. It's some magnetic interference or something. But don't worry about it, Dr. Cochrane. We got a warp engine to repair.
I assume they're saying that to him because they don't want him to worry about anything other than what he needs to worry about. That's not his problem.
Yeah, that works. At that point, I
assume there's big huddles of just the Enterprise crew going, oh my God, the ship could be gone. We could be stuck living the rest of our lives here.
I'm going to talk about like the visuals of this movie again, and when we see Picard in his, like, the new uniform captain vest. We see Cisco in a little bit in DS9, but we have Picard rocking the captain's vest here, and he's got that security team, all those, like, gold shirt security members, and they all have the big Type 3 phaser rifles, and they look like they're ready to kick some ass. And you have your android there, you have your Klingon there, and Picard sets up the plan there that they have to go puncture the coolant and engineering, kill all the Borg's organic components, and they should be able to retake control of engineering and get the ship back.
Do they suggest to Data that it might be better if he
turns off his emotion
off the emotion chip for the potential fighting to come, and he's just like, done.
Yeah.
That to me is actually a cooler bit from him. Like, it's kind of a quietly badass line like I want from him. That's to me is cooler than like lock and load or whatever. Those are fine scenes, but I like his just done.
That's them, like they found ways to use the emotion chip in this movie and make him still feel like Data.
Yeah.
Yes.
He's not like this weird guy telling annoying jokes, crying mustard tears.
Which
like
I could excuse if he just got the chip installed, especially given the effect the chip had on him when Lore was using it. Yeah. But definitely a few years later, we need a more balanced Data, and that's what we got.
Yeah, and Geordi came back after being captured by Dr. Soren in the last movie. He tampered with the chip a little bit. Data now has the ability to turn it on and off.
Geordi also said, yeah, fuck this visor thing. No, we're going to have the eyes implanted, so it's really hard for me to be a Trojan horse.
LeVar Burton fought for this for a while. He really wanted to have Geordi just have like normal eyes or have just like contact lenses because he always felt restrained by the visor. It limited his ability to act, to emote.
Yes. The eyes are the windows to the soul.
Which is something that, like, I think one of the reasons why they've never been able to pull off just to talk about X-Men, because we talk about X-Men a lot on Tex-Trek. They've never pulled off a great depiction of the character Cyclops
on screen
in live action. I think part of that is because we can never see his eyes.
We can never see his soul. He has no soul.
Yeah, it's harder for audiences to connect to him.
Yeah, it's true.
And almost all the best aliens, you can see the human actor's eyes through that alien costume.
when they're among the Borg, this is something that goes all the way back to their very first appearance. One of my very favorite thing about the Borg is this notion that you can intermix among them, and their threat sensors won't go off as long as you're not directly threatening them.
Yeah.
It is one of my very favorite things about them, and they almost always use it, and they do it in this, and it's really cool.
And because it's creepy when you can like walk up next to them, and they just like ignore you and they walk past you, but
it makes you feel small.
Yeah,
like you are so insignificant that they're just not worried about you.
But if you were to trigger them, they could probably kill you in an instant.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
And when you have to go like deeper into the Borg and like infiltrate deeper into their area, and you're more and more surrounded by the tension is higher and higher.
Yes.
And the audience knows, at least on a subliminal level, eventually the shit's going to hit the fan, and these people are going to be in deep trouble.
Say what you want about a guy with a machete chasing you, being scary. At least he's acknowledging your existence and acknowledging that you are in some way important.
Right.
The Borg give you none of that.
Right.
They don't even give you that. You are not even important, enough to be guarded against.
When they are when they are patrolling down the corridors, this is the first time where we do get like a really good look at these Borg, and they look so much better than they ever looked on the show.
But they true to the original design enough that I didn't even notice that I thought, boy, they look really good when you get them on a big screen. It wasn't until later when I saw some before and after photos, I was like, okay, they did actually change the design, but I had to go look at it.
And it's the same people designing them. You still have Michael Westmore doing the makeup, and you still have Robert Blackman doing the wardrobe.
Yeah.
But with the Borg, it's hard to tell where the makeup ended and where the wardrobe began. Like, Westmore and Blackman's work fused together so well.
Yes.
And it looks very unique. Like, I don't know any other, like, movie bad guys or movie monsters that look like the Borg.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're like David Cronenberg zombies.
Yeah. Well, there's definitely some H.R. Giger.
Yeah, you see where they're assimilating Enterprise crew members, and you see, like, that arm moving around without a hand, like it's ready to have like some appliance attached to it.
Yeah.
And they're like installing shit on people's eyes. Yeah. And like a lot of people have a hard time. Like you can't mess with people's eyes in movies. Like that's hard. Like a lot of people have a hard time watching that.
Yeah.
But yeah, like the Borg are scary here, and then when they have to engage them in combat, they set up that like the phasers are only going to work maybe 12 times at most, and then when they adapt to the phaser frequency. I like that the threat is maintained where only the android and the Klingon are strong enough to fight them hand to hand. We see like a human security officer try to melee a Borg with his phaser rifle.
Goes poorly.
Red shirt's gonna red shirt.
Yeah, even a gold-shirted red shirt. Wow, these guys are essentially red shirts.
Yeah, they are red shirts.
Speaking of red shirts, we do have Lieutenant Hawk in the movie. Played by... what's that? Neil McDougal, McDowell. What's his name?
I have no idea.
Who is he?
Lieutenant Hawk.
The flight control officer on the bridge.
Who
actually gets some dialogue.
Is he from the show?
No,
I think he's on.
Oh, okay. You're just talking. He's like a slightly more prominent supporting character.
He played Dum Dum Dugan in the Captain America movie.
Right.
And he's on Band of Brothers, and he's on the CW Arrow show. But this was pretty early in his career before I think anyone knew much about him. But it's kind of like a fun little Easter egg to go back and see him in this now. Oh, he's done so much genre work. Data gets captured. Lily and Picard run into each other in the corridors, and Lily and Picard have good chemistry.
Those two actors together, they pair very well. I mean, I feel like in some ways Patrick Stewart pairs well with most anybody who's a pretty serious actor.
Yeah.
In fact, I'll say...
I think he brings out the best in him.
In the last movie, he had really good chemistry with Shatner. When we have, like, Kirk and Picard meet, and, like, Shatner kind of had, like, a little bit of, like, spontaneousness to his performance, and Stewart, like, reacted to all of that very well.
Yeah. It's like he kind of elevates everybody's game.
And... I think they took like just the right amount of time to get like Lily and Picard like on the same page. Where like at first like this is a woman who like just witnessed a war a decade earlier, but she gets she's super paranoid. She has like the phaser pointed at him. Eventually, he's able to calm her down. So good leadership skills, good captain skills. He's able to calm her down and prove to her, like, I'm not part of the Eastern Coalition. I'm on a starship from the future. I know it sounds crazy. Look out my force field, and there's the Earth. Mm-hmm. But the way that like he's like kind of like nervously explaining that, where he's like, "Oh, you're on a ship, a starship." Like
it doesn't feel like he's
real,
right? It doesn't feel like he's reading lines. This is like that's a sort of a Shakespearean thing for doing monologues. Is you have to reveal the monologue not as if you're doing a speech that is famous, but as if you are drawing those words out for the first time. Yes. So I'm sure this is something that he is especially talented at. But yeah, he's great. He's like it's kind of interesting to see Picard under that sort of duress. And thinking on his feet, but still kind of having to stammer it a little bit.
It just makes me so thankful that in a few months we're going to get 10 additional hours of Patrick Stewart as Captain Picard.
Oh, yes. It's going to be awesome.
But he also gets the Tommy gun, some Sporg.
Yeah. So when they get into the holodeck, we get a return to the Dixon Hill holodeck program.
It's another sense of the history that you were talking about.
Yes. Yeah, they pull something back from actually it was all the way back to season 1 of The Next Generation. Yep. And there's a shot in the trailers for this movie before it came out that actually showed Patrick Stewart shooting the Tommy gun. And like in the shot in the trailer as I remember seeing it back in 96, it looked like he was wearing a white tuxedo and he was shooting some type. Maybe it's a machine gun. I don't know what it is, but it has like fire coming out the end of the gun.
Yeah.
So it's like, is that like
the
some
muzzle
type of
flash looked like fire?
Yeah. So is it like some type of like? Is it actually just like a modern day machine gun? Is it some type of like weird future phaser? Like why is he in
no YouTube to go and look?
Why is he in a white tuxedo? Was he at like some like Starfleet award ceremony on Earth? These are like all questions I was asking myself. I'm like I really got to see that movie when it comes out. I need to know what the hell is going on here.
Had they done that particular tactic he did before, which was lure enemies into holodeck, turn off safety gauge?
No one had ever pulled that off before, and I thought it was kind of a clever idea here.
I think so.
Mean, like holodecks with their safety switched off, if you have control and the enemy does not, would be incredibly deadly. Yeah. They should that would be the ultimate ambush environment, you know.
Although I would imagine that in Picard's era, there's probably not a lot of Galaxy class ships to get boarded.
Well, they have holodecks on pretty much every ship now.
Yeah.
True. But even then, I feel like Starfleet is pretty good at not getting boarded.
I don't know. It happens a lot.
Does it?
I mean, we have several shows, like every Star Trek show.
I guess I think of it as a dramatic contrivance, but we're not meant to think, Starfleet, their ships are always getting boarded by pirates.
Yeah, based on what I've seen, like the ship gets boarded like twice a year.
Yeah, well, that's like...
I get what you're saying.
Same with all the holodeck craziness.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think... It's one of those things that's like, arguably, it shouldn't have been as easy to do as he did. You should probably have to do more to just turn off the safety.
He's a captain. He's got all the high-level admin passwords.
Yeah, well, I say it because I don't care, because it's a cool scene.
He's the root user on the ship's computer.
I feel like maybe nobody should be able to just, on a whim, turn off the safety valve.
Well, it is established that you can do it, because we see Worf switching them off, too, as I recall. So
that's also insane. But it's a super awesome scene. Tommy gunning the Borg is one of those super weird things. Did you, Father, when you actually saw what it was, did you think it was cool, or were you like, oh, that didn't live up?
No, I thought it was awesome.
I thought it was cool.
I was actually relieved that it wasn't something weird. That it was like, oh yeah, this actually makes sense why I saw all this stuff.
Yeah.
The way that they edit this, where they hang on the shot of him shooting the gun a little bit longer than I think you normally would, and
he does that scream as he's firing, which is not a standard thing.
because the editing here is intentionally making him look not quite heroic, making him look more like violent and
a little unhinged
and aggressive. Because that's part of the story where he's being overwhelmed with a need for revenge.
Yep. And Lily gets to really have some serious acting scenes with him when she calls him out on it. Yeah. In a way that, like, Picard rarely gets called out. Even when Riker and other people call him out, it doesn't usually become that heightened yelling at each other thing. Because she has to break him down to get through to him.
Yeah, Picard and Lily make it back to the bridge, and Picard is determined to continue to fight the Borg, but Dr. Crusher and Worf both think that that's a lost cause that they need to abandon the ship.
And you had pointed out that it would have been kind of cool if Crusher had maybe talked the captain down.
When Picard says his mind is made up, he goes into the conference room. Lily is the one who goes in there and talks to him. It kind of feels like that would be John Luke's best friend, Beverly, would be the one to do that.
Or, obviously, if you had a ship's counselor, I mean,
she was down on the planet.
Yeah, I know, but I'm just saying that was, look, we have a scene where we need counseling done, and once again, it's not Troy doing it, it's, Guinan or somebody else. But
the Lily...
They wanted to shine the spotlight, of course, on a new character to give the movie a little bit of something new to just a new dynamic.
And the Lily and Picard dynamic is so good that I like it and I accept it. And Patrick Stewart is so memorable. His whole no. And then he breaks his little ships.
Yeah.
My old roommate I used to live with, JT, who actually watched every episode of Star Trek and every Star Trek movie with me while we lived together. At the time, he had not seen any of it. But we would always say that to each other. We'd always be like, no! like whenever we disagreed about something.
I kept running into people quoting their line must be drawn here.
No father.
Yeah, but they would use it as if that's a positive thing, and I'm like, you realize, and memes on the internet, and I'm like, you guys realize this, the point
he was
of
getting
that scene,
caught up in the hawkishness.
That was a bad thing, right?
Oh, but we also had like Picard and the Worf confrontation, where Picard is, he's totally unhinged when he's calling Worf a coward.
Yeah,
he's like, you just want to blow the ship up and run away. And Worf gets so mad, and this was in the trailer too. When Worf said, "If you were any other man, I would kill you where you stand." So I was watching the trailer. I was like, "What the hell did Picard do to Worf to make him that damn mad?" But
good job, trailers.
I don't think he would act. I don't know. Maybe he would kill Picard if he was so. Well, I think Worf wouldn't.
Well, if he was any other man, but he's not. He's Picard.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I feel like Worf also really likes Riker. He really likes O'Brien. There's a few people who might
should
be
do
able to
this
get
scene
away
like
with
the
that.
jerk, where he's like, if you were any other man other than Picard or Riker
or Miles O'Brien.
I should probably include a few women in the list.
My son Alexander, my brother Kern.
Did I say Alexander? Maybe.
Yeah. I think, given the amount of hyperbole Picard was throwing around, Worf is allowed to throw around a little bit as well.
It's another good big scene. Picard gets to do some of the high Shakespearean kind of drama, the yelly drama that the show didn't always get around to.
Yeah.
And the apology that follows after he has that heart-to-heart with Lily.
Oh, yeah.
And he
it's
tells...
a quintessential compliment that, that is one of those, a defining thing from Picard and for Worf.
Yeah, when he says, in fact, I think you're the bravest man I know.
Mm-hmm.
And that always hits me in the heart, in the feels when I watch that. And especially because Worf was kind of when I first got into Star Trek, Spock was my favorite character, but then when I started to see how cool Worf was on DS9, he kind of became my favorite character. Mm-hmm. And at this point, Worf was definitely my favorite character, and I liked having him and Picard have that heart-to-heart moment.
Mm-hmm.
Also, Worf really shines when they do the assault on the deflector array.
Yep, one of many cool action sequences in there.
And I thought all that stuff is shot so well.
By the way, that array sequence mirrors the kind of it has the Borg thing where you maneuver around them without them acting until they know what's going on. The whole sequence plays out in a kind of unusual, unexpected way, and it's a really cool action sequence that's not quite like anything else.
And I love them using the magnetic boots to walk on the outside of the ship. Mm-hmm. That's something that I thought about as a kid after seeing Star Trek 6. Mm-hmm. I always thought you could put on spacesuits and magnetic boots and just walk on the outside of the ship, couldn't you? And just walk underneath it and stuff.
Yeah, I did like the upside down thing. They flipped them upside down. That was very cool.
Yeah, there's some good camera work.
That is when Worf gets a little queasy because he can't handle the 0G, but he's still a badass in spite of that. Oh, and this is the first time we see the or had it been on Deep Space Nine before this? The not the Batleth, but the Micleth. They'd already used it on DS9.
I don't remember.
Is that what he uses to chop off that Borg's arm?
Yeah, and that's
It's like a machete-ish kind of thing.
Yeah, it's
right?
kind of like a half bat left that you can like swing with one arm. That actually Michael Dorn helped design because he kind of had like some influence on like the fighting style that Worf would use.
That makes it extra cool.
Because on DS9, like Worf actually got to like fight a lot and be a badass security. Well, he wasn't security; he was in command, but
Still got to fight.
Yeah, where he should have been like a badass security officer on Next Generation.
Yeah. They finally lived up to the promise of it and realized they didn't have to crap on the warrior every time.
But he has that cool line, which this is the action movie catchphrase that might make you cringe. I can accept it, but when he says "assimilate this" and blows the deflector dish to hell and kills the Borg on it,
I think it's cheesy, but I also think Worf it tends to be cheesy, so it's in character. I can see Worf.
He wanted like
that.
a war story, like like he went back to DS9. And he was like drinking at the bar, and he's like telling Morn like all about this. He's like, and then I wrapped the cable from the Borg's arm around my damaged spacesuit and patched it up. I grabbed the Type 3 phaser, I aimed at the deflector dish, and I said, "Assimilate this."
The thing when they blast the dish that they're on, is it the deflector dish?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It goes up really nicely. It's a cool effect. And it takes what is a kind of cheesy line and makes it, I think, work.
Yeah.
Because when you explode bad guys, it always helps your line.
And while all of that stuff was going on, we have Data captured by the Borg Queen. She is graphing skin to him, and
she's touching him and making him tingly.
This is the payoff of where like Data didn't have the ability to physically touch and feel the sensation of physical objects that he makes contact with, like with the Phoenix with the rocket. It is kind of creepy, and like Ron Moore and Brandon Braga both like going in weird directions with sci-fi sometimes, and I think like the overt sexuality of it might have come from Ron Moore.
The guy who would go on to create Baltar and Six and all that.
Yeah, some of his Cylon stuff in Battlestar Galactica.
This was the first appearance of the Borg Queen, right?
Yes, and that was actually like a studio mandate. They wanted to have like a specific villain. So that's why the Borg Queen was created. It kind of breaks the idea of the Borg as a hive mind.
Well,
but the use of her, I think, is pretty cool.
I think she basically says, though she gets a little overly poetic about it, that she is just the physical manifestation of the entire collective. She is a avatar, a talking head for the entire collective.
She does kind of do things like kind of toy with him and stuff like that and seduce him in a way that the very matter-of-fact Borg collective doesn't seem like they would do.
Well, no, that's the thing, is that the Borg collective, if you take the movie at face value, what it says is that the Borg collective, the entire hive as a collective, is in fact this kind of vampy seductress.
I like that idea, though. I like how like weird that is, and like for me, it still works. And I like the idea. It's just like a really cool, weird sci-fi idea of a bunch of the alien races assimilated together, all their minds, all this consciousness combined, and instead of it just like going insane, or instead of it just being like this supercomputer, it decides to like manifest as like this horny lady is gonna like seduce the android. I don't know, I kind of like that. I kind of like just like the weirdness, the absurdity of that.
Yeah, see, at first when I was watching it the most recently, I said, oh, well, maybe she's just acting that way because that's the best way to abuse and manipulate Data's emotion chip. But no, she keeps acting that way when she doesn't need to. She acts that way to Picard when she knows it's not. It's clearly, this is her actual personality. That lipstick is not just for show. There is a weird moment where where Data tries to escape and the Borg all start to surround her and she has to tell the Borg to stop, which doesn't make any sense if she and the collective are the same thing. But I think the way she kind of just holds up her hand and they walk away, and I kind of got the idea that that's probably the director not understanding the concept. I'm not sure if that's actually in the script. That just might be Jonathan Frakes falling back into standard, this is the leader, this is the minion mentality when he directs the movement of the actors. So I'm not going to pay too much attention to that shot. because everything she says is different than what that shot implies.
In Voyager, we see the Queen like having conversations with the collective.
That's Voyager and Voyager's crap, and that's all I have to say about that. Voyager took some marginal ideas from from First Contact and ran with them into the ground, making them much worse. Like, we'll take this Queen that's a bit iffy and just totally ignore everything we've said about the Borg.
That's another big thing about this movie. Part of the impact that it had is that after this movie came out, Voyager became like the Borg show.
Yes.
The Borg became like the Klingons. What the Klingons were in the original series, that's what the Borg became of Voyager. And this show also is kind of like the prequel story to Star Trek Enterprise.
Yes.
And basically paved the way for that show. So it had like a huge impact on the next decade of Star Trek on TV. What did y'all think of the Picard's confrontation against the Borg Queen? We learned that the Queen actually chose him to be assimilated because she wanted him to be the Borg king, I guess.
Yeah, well, she wanted him to keep his individuality on some level. She wanted him to voluntarily be part of it, but something other than this forced part of the collective that all the rest of the drones are. So it was some weird, like, out of the entire Alpha, entire Delta and Beta and Alpha quadrants, I guess.
The entire galaxy.
So out of the galaxy, Picard is the one person that the Borg want to have a special consensual relationship with. And that struck me as just a little too, like, Picard is the chosen one just because he's the chosen one.
Yeah, I get that. Like, sometimes Star Trek makes, like, the captain just like, oh, you're just like the center of the universe.
Yeah. I could, like, they don't say this, but I kind of give it to him in the sense that they assimilated him. He proved spectacularly effective for what they wanted for a time. And so they want to recreate that. Maybe on some level they see that although they don't like individualism, they can use it to their own ends. And so he having already been a successful experiment or quasi-successful, let's duplicate that.
So, but then we're back to apparently Picard is so special that he convinced the Borg that individualism might be tactically useful or strategically useful.
But I think it's more like he happened to have been the one the first actually I guess they'd assimilated people before, but I don't know what led to the creation of Locutus other than like him having particularly deep knowledge of Starfleet. Is that why?
Because they use Picard strangely in The Best of Both Worlds to how we see Borg function in other stories, and they already had him as an individual there when he was Locutus instead of being 7 of 9 or 3 of 5. Or
right.
Yeah.
He was presented as an individual then. So I think that First Contact does kind of explain a little bit of that more. I kind of like there being some mystery to the Borg. I'm glad we don't know how the Borg Queen got off that cube.
Well, I think she is the collective. Unless you destroy the entire collective, you don't destroy the Borg Queen.
Well, on Voyager, we meet one of the few Texans who's in Star Trek, who was someone who was assimilated at Wolf 359 and ended up in the Delta Quadrant. So some Borg survived from that cube. We see in Wolf.
Yeah, now that part's kind of weird because apparently the Borg cube sent a ship back to the Delta Quadrant before arriving at Earth and getting blown up.
Yeah, that's how I figured the Queen got off. This is where like the Borg Queen, she's kind of like a jealous ex-girlfriend because Picard's like, okay, I'll come back to you, and then she's like, no, I got a new boyfriend now. And then we see like cyborg Data, who was having sex with her. Data got to use his fully functional programming again.
Along with a reverse circumcision of human flesh, apparently. So.
Yeah, I had never thought of this before, but apparently, if he's given organic skin in order to experience physical touch and sensation, they had to have done a dick graft also for him to have a sexual encounter with the Queen.
I'm not comfortable with being on this show anymore.
Ron Moore and his Cylon skin jobs.
Yes.
This was the proto form of that.
So you were asking about how we felt about the Borg Queen. The truth is, she's a great visual, and I liked her scenes with Data. I didn't really particularly care much about her scenes with Picard. I was more interested in his scenes with Lily, his general mania to inflict, revenge on the Borg. And if the movie has one or two weaknesses, I think it's that their confrontation isn't particularly notable.
There didn't seem to be a whole lot of the rage that we'd seen in Picard earlier when he runs into... This is the embodiment of everything he hates.
You could punch this one.
Yeah, you can punch this one, you know?
There's totally rage when he has, like, this final confrontation. When... first of all,
it seemed more like, let Data go and I'll be your boy toy. That wasn't exactly struck me as rage.
Because Data's life was on the line. He's trying to save Data.
I know.
Like, after that, when, like, Data, betrays the Queen, and we were like, oh, yeah, Data, he was always on our side. And it is kind of corny how he delivers, like, the line, resistance is futile. The... action movie punchline thing. And it is kind of cheesy how, like, he shot the torpedoes, like, deliberately miss.
Well, he needed to get everyone looking over there so he could sidle up to the cylinder.
Yeah. Actually, I like that scene.
Yeah. And it does make a lot of sense that, like, he needed her to be, like, really distracted, because they've already shown that when he tries to, like, go against her, she can just, like, raise force fields in there and, like, keep you from going anywhere.
And we know there's a force field that can pop up around that warp core.
Yeah.
Because we see it.
So he had to get close to it. He had to cause a distraction. And I like that he used his android strength to punch it open. Yeah. And it burns away the flesh he had just been given.
Yes.
And we see it, like, it's so satisfying to see, like, the Borg Queen, like being tortured by the coolant, burning her organic flesh away.
Yeah. Picard it's very Raiders of the Lost Ark ending style.
Stewart got to show off his buff arms. He'd been working out. He
really impressive.
Something like he really wanted to do.
Because the heat was up there, they're all glistening too, 80s action style.
And then I love him where he does, like, snap the spine of the Borg Queen, of her, like Robo head and spine.
Yeah.
Looks like a Predator trophy. Yeah. Like, if the Predator took a trophy of, like, a Terminator exoskeleton or endoskeleton.
There's the sequence after that where Picard is talking with Data about how long he considered their offer, and what does he say?
Yeah, it was like less than a second.
Yeah, but he's like, for an android, that's an eternity, and I always liked that line. It's very Data. It encapsulates the struggle he really felt, and yet there's a slightly comedic element because it was like. Data could have been like, they almost tempted me for less than 1 second, and it was terrible.
And somehow
I'm a very bad boy.
Yeah.
Somehow it feels both very android, but also very human.
Yeah,
and
it's a really good line.
It does have like the slight comedic element to it. It's like pitch perfect Data.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the movie ends with Zephyr Cochrane completes his warp flight.
You get some rock and roll.
It's got a bunch of Steppenwolf going on in this movie. That's what the 10-year-old now. That 10-year-old watching YouTube in Montana is for some reason going to be a big Steppenwolf fan.
I remember now in the theater, I had been, because I worked a job that I was cleaning up fields of garbage. I had a Walkman that only did AM, so I listened to oldies rock, and that was the first music I'd ever really listened to. So I became this huge oldies 50s, 60s, and 70s rock fan, and rock and roll fan, and all my friends hated it, but I was always playing it when they came over to my house, and they all, oh God, Steppenwolf and ZZ Top and all the rest.
You got so validated.
When that happened in the movie, I was like, yes! And they're all like, oh God.
When we were rewatching the movie, I was just kind of half joking, but like, there's a jukebox in the playing in the tavern or in the bar, and we did kind of wonder idly if that's jukebox is one of the few things that survived World War III. So all the classic rock from that, Steppenwolf, Roy Orbison, and that. Maybe that was just what was on the jukebox.
I don't know if it's like one of the few things, because we know there's still planes, there's still trains. Because Zephyr Cochrane says I don't like to fly, I take the train. There's still some.
And he's planning on selling this warp drive.
Yeah, there's not a ton of jukeboxes in the modern world anyway. Though I'm just saying jukeboxes might be a little bit low on
I see jukeboxes all the time.
Well, that's because you're a barfly.
Yeah. I tend in headcanon imagine that there are actually quite a few functional cities and civilizations
I think so.
at this point. But this is where the nuclear missile is, so this is where Zephyr Zefram Cochrane is, even if it's the middle of bumfuck nowhere in this rebuilding Earth.
Yeah, I think their cities are just rough-hewn and a lot of cannibalized parts and all that.
There's actually like a whole shitload of nuclear missiles in Montana because during the Cold War, that's like one of our closest, as in like the United States, that's like one of the closest points to Russia. You could, in theory, just like shoot missiles like over Canada and over the Arctic ice cap and into Russia. So there's a shitload of missiles there. And the idea that Zefram Cochrane needed like one of those missiles to be like the body of his spaceship. And they actually used a real nuclear missile to be the Phoenix, which is kind of cool. But yeah, we do get like the ending in Montana near the city of Bozeman that Brandon Braga loves to reference. And the first contact is between humans and Vulcans, and Ron Moore describes this moment as the nativity scene of Star Trek. And there was so much at stake in this movie. We talk about like the stakes a lot in the movies, how they have to be dialed up for the for the movie experience, and like the entire Star Trek legacy, all that history is at risk if the Borg succeed in disrupting First Contact. And I love the Jerry Goldsmith music I mentioned earlier that plays, and it's the most like touching moment. This makes me cry when I watch it, when Zefram Cochrane and that Vulcan do the hand jive, they shake hands, and that is what Enterprise definitely builds off of when we get to that show a few years later.
When that scene happened in the movie, as somebody who had read some of the books that had come out in like the 80s and 90s, my memory was that the First Contact, at least among the more often used stories, was with like Alpha Centaurans who were basically like humans, almost physically identical. And so I was like a little worried. I'm like, well, that's not going to be super dramatic, but I didn't know what to expect. It was only like right as it was about to happen, I was like, oh, it'd be cool as if they went ahead and just made it Vulcans. And then I was like, oh man, yeah, that was. And so yeah, I get chills when I watch that scene. It's to me, it's really one of the great iconic scenes in all of Trek movies.
It's also a big callback to the original series, just having Vulcans in such a prominent role. I mean, I guess there was a Vulcan on Voyager, but at that point in Star Trek, you were talking about how it ties all the stuff together.
Yeah,
just choosing Vulcans instead of
there was not a Vulcan in the movie otherwise, and that's iconic Trek.
Yeah, and this movie also came out for the 30th anniversary of Star Trek, so I think they intentionally wanted it to have like that kind of for it to feel that so important to the entire franchise.
Yeah.
Whoever the guy playing the Vulcan was did a good job of being both serious and a little slightly comically bemused or whatever. It reminds me of the portrayal of Elrond at the council in Lord of the Rings from Hugo Weaving. A touch of that sort of dry but impressive and also kind of slightly funny thing going on. Really, really great Vulcan, considering he really only had a minute or so to work with on the screen.
And the reactions of the Vulcan and the reaction of James Cromwell as Zefram Cochrane when he can't do the hand jive and his reaction just saying like when he's told live long and prosper, he just says thanks, and then he tries to like shake the guy's hand awkwardly. It feels so Vulcan and so human at the same. I was like, that's perfect. Like that's how you want like our meeting. That's like our two like species is at our most embodiment of what we are.
Yeah,
I think I told y'all I wasn't into Generations at the time. I was liking First Contact when I saw it. When a movie ends on a really strong note, it's almost like it gives it an extra star for me if I were doing a movie rating thing. And that like scene was so good that it was like ding, extra star immediately. I always like the ending to it.
They've done studies. We are predisposed to judge any story heavily by its ending. You can have a story that you love all the way up until the ending, and then if the ending is bad, we will generally decide this whole story was crap, even though we loved everything except the ending.
Game of Thrones is going to be an interesting test case for this one. So, but yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it is. And it's true. In fact, I consciously try to fight against that. Say, okay, if I remove the ending, then what did I think of the movie? Because sometimes that's a different answer. But,
yeah, like all the top five, all my top five Star Trek movies, the Wrath of Khan, Search for Spock, Voyage Home, Undiscovered Country, and now First Contact. Like each one of them makes me cry like one point in the movie, and that's something like always makes me give something an extra star, even though I think
they
it's
can
kinda,
get that emotional investment.
Yeah.
even though it's kind of arbitrary, because I think like I'm pretty easy with stuff that I already have like some investment in, that I'm already like
I think I was trying to
committed
think, what was the biggest emotional kick from the most recent watch of First Contact? Honestly, it was Picard telling Worf that you're a coward. Because I was like, there's nothing worse that could happen to Worf than this man telling him he's a coward. I was like, wow, that is pretty much the worst thing that you could do to Worf. I can't really, I mean, did losing Jadzia hurt more than this? Maybe. But
yes, it did. Of course, it did.
I don't know. Worf attaches a whole lot to that sense of self, to that statement, and to have a mentor figure tell him that. I mean,
every single day after we're gonna go on a DS9 tangent,
yes.
but I'm probably gonna cut this out anyways. But every single day after Jadzia's death, he thought about Jadzia's death.
Well,
like
They make a point of saying that?
No, but like I know that's how he felt.
Yeah,
like,
well, and
he didn't think about like Picard like yelling at him this one time every single day for the rest of his life.
Picard apologized. B, Worf is probably smart enough to realize that Picard doesn't actually mean it.
Yeah, he knows. Like he's just like mad at the Borg because the Borg raped him, and now he has like PTSD.
Yeah. So
you don't know. Worf might devote 5 minutes of each morning to being pissed at Picard.
He's got a holodeck program where he goes in there and punches Picard.
So, Dave, do we have any subspace transmissions?
I have some pulled up. These are all from the Twitter sphere, starting with Rick Carter. He writes, Picard seemed out of character to me, killing a crew member that had been assimilated with Tommy gun. He was living proof, he meaning Picard, that the process could be reversed. Made for a cool old school versus high-tech juxtaposition action beat, but was it worth it? It's an interesting point.
I think it's supposed to be Picard not acting right.
Yeah.
That's the point of the scene.
I guess probably what he would argue is he didn't want Picard to fall that low.
Oh, right.
And I'm like, I think there's a case to be made there. I do agree. I think it was worth it in that sort of heightened movie place that they often go to.
I actually have some issues with that. I'd like to think that for some reason, they were under the assumption that they wouldn't be able to convert these people back.
Right,
like they were.
It was also this was a do or die scenario, not much time for reflection.
Well, not really. Picard got all the Borg's attention by shooting the thing, and then led them into the holodeck to kill them all.
Yeah, I'm just like
he could have just walked on. Him and Lily could have just walked.
I know, but
by.
he needed that node from them to figure out what they were doing.
True. Okay.
Let's see. Locutus of Borg himself says, not just the best TNG movie, but one of the best Trek movies. With so many new elements, it felt so fresh after generations. At Jonathan Frakes did a magnificent job that has stood the test of time. It adds so much to Trek lore whilst nodding to the franchise as it was at the time. So I think that probably lines up where you are, Father.
I agree completely.
Let's see. Here's one from Facebook. Jeremy Robarts writes, I love how we see Lily getting to see the Enterprise, her conversations with Picard, and the use of the holodeck. The movie has so many references to TNG and some great supporting character actors playing Lily and Zefram Cochrane. That's a good point. It's kind of cool to see the Enterprise from the perspective of somebody who is not a crew member, and also kind of freaks out over it.
It also makes the movie more accessible to casual audiences.
Oh, and it also gives us someone to explain the post-capitalism of the Federation to. Yeah. Which had a big impact on me as a kid and informed a lot of my socio-political views that I have now.
It's a scene easy to post and quote too.
But that's all we have for Star Trek First Contact. Of course, if you have anything to say about it, be sure to let us know. And also, if you have any questions or comments for the movies Star Trek Insurrection or Star Trek Nemesis, we will be talking about those very soon. As we continue to make our voyage through the Star Trek movies, and hit us up with anything that you got to contribute to that conversation, and we might use that in an upcoming podcast. And Insurrection is next up. That's on deck. We'll be talking about that Sunday. And until then, as always,
live long and prosper, y'all.
Thank all of you so much for checking out this installment of Tex-Trek. I hope you enjoyed it. Please be sure to like our YouTube videos and subscribe to our channel. Audio-only version of episodes are available at our website, www.tex-trek.com. Please check out our site, especially if you just want an audio-only podcast. We have that available for you. Y'all can also keep up with us online. You can follow us on Twitter at Tex-Trek, or you can check us out on Facebook at www.facebook.com/tex-trek. Please, by all means, let us know what you think by dropping a comment anywhere you see fit. We definitely want to hear your feedback. Let us know what you liked and what you would like to see more of, what you would like to see differently going forward. If you want to email me directly, go ahead. I can be reached at fathereeactual@tex-trek.com. Thank all y'all again. Take care.